The joy of the Lord, our true strength. Based on your interest in the connection between the Old and New Testaments and Christ-centered preaching, I recommended the sermon theme from Nehemiah 8:10b. The joy of the Lord is your strength. This theme allows you to emphasize how the Old and New Testaments are linked with Christ at the center of the entire Bible. Sermon outline. We emphasize that the Lord to be rejoiced in is God who makes covenants and saves in the Old Testament, and how all these attributes are fulfilled in Jesus Christ in the New Testament. We explain that rejoicing is a volitional choice beyond mere emotion, and how this joy becomes spiritual strength, strength to overcome challenges, and strength for evangelism too, deepening the understanding of biblical joy. To understand joy more biblically, we delve deeply into the Jewish perspective of the Old Testament and original language analysis. Jewish understanding. For Jews, joy stemmed from their covenantal relationship with God, salvation and deliverance, God's presence and worship, and from His word and the law. These were often experienced during feasts. Differences in understanding joy between believers and non-believers. Believers' joy, God-centered, a fruit of the Spirit, and a lasting joy based on hope. Non-believers' happiness, pleasure, world-centered, temporary, and an emotion dependent on external circumstances. Original language analysis. We examine the nuances and usage of Hebrew words for joy like she, maha, simcha, ge, gil, she, hadvu, chedva, and run, ranan. We also covered erupt, meaning for emotions or sounds to suddenly burst forth strongly. 3. The joy of sanctification and becoming like Jesus. Sanctification and becoming like Jesus are very closely related concepts. Sanctification, a lifelong, continuous process by which we are set apart for God and made holy through the power of the Holy Spirit, turning away from sin. It's a broader theological concept encompassing God's sovereign work and our obedient response. Becoming like Jesus. This is the ultimate goal and specific outcome of sanctification. It means being transformed to imitate Jesus' character, attitudes, and actions. Why rejoice when it's difficult? Even if the process of becoming like Jesus involves suffering, it is due to the restoration of the image of God, purification through suffering, the Holy Spirit's companionship, and hope for ultimate glory. Above all, joy is given as our response to God's initiating love. 4. The purpose and direction of our lives. The Bible teaches that the purpose and direction of our lives are Christ-likeness, becoming like Jesus. Purpose of creation, to restore and become like the image of God which was damaged by sin, in Jesus. Genesis 1:26-27. Purpose of salvation, through predestination, we are to be conformed to the image of Christ. Romans 8:29. Through the work of the Holy Spirit, we are continually transformed. 2 Corinthians 3:18. Future hope, the certainty that we will be completely transformed into likeness to Him when Jesus returns. 1 John 3:2. This purpose involves glorifying God, finding true joy and satisfaction, having a positive influence on the world, and possessing hope even in suffering. 5. Discerning worldly pleasure from godly joy. When we use the same words as non-believers but understand their meanings differently, it can cause significant confusion. The discernment between pleasure and joy is particularly important. Danger of misunderstanding. The misconception that all joy is God's will can lead to confusion of values, erosion of moral standards, difficulty in evangelism, and a hindrance to spiritual growth. Proverbs 14:12. Categories of human pleasures can be divided into instinctual, sensory pleasures, food, sexual pleasure, material, consumer pleasures, wealth, consumption, status, and social, psychological pleasures, recognition, power, entertainment, intellectual pleasure. These pleasures are temporary, potentially addictive, and can ultimately leave an emptiness. The decisive difference between pleasure and biblical joy. Source. Pleasure comes from self, world, sin, while joy comes from God Himself. Duration. pleasure is temporary, while joy is persistent. Outcome, pleasure yields negative results, while joy bears the fruit of the Spirit. Direction, pleasure is self-gratification, while joy is glorifying God and loving others. Biblical wisdom for discernment. Strengthening discernment through the Word, seeking the Holy Spirit's illumination and guidance, honest and clear communication, and exemplary living through demonstration are crucial. 6. Dimensions of spirit and our bodies. The concept of the Spirit being more than 3D is an attempt to understand God's infinite and omnipotent nature. God transcends the limitations of our 3D dimension of space-time. Jesus Christ, that infinite Spirit of God, took on a fleshly garment and entered into our 3D space-time, incarnation. Our bodies, our weak and finite bodies, are like clay jars or earthen vessels. They contain the treasure of the gospel of Jesus Christ and the Spirit of God. Our bodies are also like an alabaster jar, meaning that when we deny ourselves and sacrifice, when broken, the fragrance of Jesus' love within us flows out into the world. This is our greatest purpose and privilege.